All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it. We'll do it live.
Okay. Go.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live. Fucking thing sucks.
5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
Fireside Chats.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy Lou Martinez, aka Big Chief Burrito, live with you on a Tuesday. Fireside Chats with Big Chief Burrito, part of the 2 a.m. Burrito podcast. And since we're talking about film today, this will also be an unofficial Ed Wood Film School episode. Let's hit that promo. Hope everybody's having a good start to your October. The spookiness is upon us. Hope everybody's staying safe. Hope everybody's getting back to work, back to business, or staying home, doing your thing, whatever it is that you are doing. Thank you for joining us here tonight, live from the Burrito Lounge in beautiful Chula Vista, California. Interesting chat today. Something I've been looking forward to for a couple of, I want to say several weeks and a couple of months, actually. This is somebody that I had on my radar for a while. Somebody that I knew about peripherally, somebody that's sort of, like I said, occupying some of the same spaces that I wish to occupy in the next few years in terms of their filmmaking career, as far as being a little bit more established, having a few more films under their belt, and be able to branch out and do some different types of things. And I'm incredibly happy that we're going to get to talk about it. This is a filmmaker that has 7 features under the belt. I have 2. So he's got 5. He's 5 ahead of me. He's also done a bunch of shorts. He's actually directed and written for the stage as well. He has a book coming out with pre-orders starting soon about his journey in filmmaking. And he's also doing an upcoming sort of masterclass about filmmaking, specifically as it related to Chicano filmmakers and Chicanos that are in the film industry and in the arts. So let's jump right into it. Want to welcome our guest, Mr. Kenneth Castillo, to the show.
How's everybody doing? How you doing, Big Chief?
Thank you. I'm doing good, man. Thank you for stopping by. We did our introductions earlier, but like I said, I admire where you are as a filmmaker. I know it's taken you a long time to get there, and like I said, I want to be a 15-year overnight success, as you say. How long have you been actually making films right now?
I would say I unofficially 20 years, officially 15 years.
20 years. Hey, that's a good resume for 20 years, man.
I try to remind myself of that.
It's a tough industry, and I always say
For sure.
it's the people, the people that continue on usually, they find some sort of niche or some sort of success. It's usually the people that drop off, that end up by the wayside. Do you feel that kind of the same, that it's kind of a process of attrition for the people that actually make it?
Um, I don't know the answer to that yet. I will say this: there have been a lot of filmmakers that I started with that aren't doing it anymore. There are a lot of filmmakers that started, 10 years after I started that aren't doing it anymore. I think what really separates anyone pursuing filmmaker as a professional is if they've done a second film. Because if you've done a first film, I've always said I don't consider you a filmmaker until after you've done your second film. And the reason I say that is because after your first film, if your initial response right after you wrap is, holy shit, I got to do that again, then two things. One, you're crazy. And the other thing is you're a filmmaker, because most people go through the process and they get one done and the energy and the excitement gets them through that one. And then it doesn't do what they want it to do because it's one film and they stop. That's 90% of filmmakers that I've known. So if you go and do a second one, then this is what you want to do, because as you know, man, it's not
A grind.
for the weak-hearted. Yeah.
Well, I always say there's nothing like day one, shot one. Like that's like the as far as good as it gets, it's day one, shot one. When you hit render for the final time, and when you see your film and other people reacting to it on the big screen, those are like the three pinnacles of filmmaking, like in terms of from a filmmaker's perspective for me. So if you can get through that entire process for one film and then say, let's run it back.
Yeah, let's start again. Let's start over.
let's start from the beginning. People stopping in right away. Andrew says, shout out Cholo Chaplin. Thank you for stopping by, Andrew.
Andrew was in my first episode of Cholo Chaplin.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What did you play? So 20 years, 15 unofficial. I was kind of checking in on a couple of interviews that you've done going into this, and because I don't like to duplicate a lot of the stuff that other people say, number one, but also just to kind of get an idea of the things that you've talked about. You started off as an actor and sort of a not happy about the fact that people were telling you that you had the aptitude to be a director.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is I went to an acting academy, and the third year we had to take a directing class, and then we would, if we got a B or higher in the class, we got to direct a one act the final semester. And I was very strong-minded, very stubborn individual at that point, not very open to what people had to say. But I did participate in the class, and my attitude was I wanted to be an actor. I didn't want to be a director. And I found my final project. The teacher basically told me, "You show the most aptitude of anyone else in the class to be a really good director, but you haven't done the work, so I can't allow you to direct the next semester." But once I graduated from that academy and I was producing, writing, and directing one-act plays with my then girlfriend, who's my wife now, I started to like that process a lot more than the acting process. So I just stopped acting after my first feature, which I cast myself in the lead in, only because I knew I would show up every day to do the part. But after that, I just said, you know what, I love filmmaking. I think I'm just going to stick with that. So that's really how it started. It started with the love of acting, a love of film, movies, theater. But it took me a minute. I went a roundabout way to find filmmaking.
How many films into your career were you till you were able to pay everybody on set? Like, obviously, because when I talk to people, it's a lot of times it's like, if you're a young filmmaker and you have an idea, or not necessarily young, because you can start whenever you want in terms of your filmmaking career. But when you're starting off and you have this energy and like, I got this idea, and then your friends are like, yeah, I want to help you out, and actors, and there's like a film community, and people are usually open to helping a first-time director with their first movie. At what point did you feel that or did you pay people from the start, or was it after your first couple of films that you sort of figure out kind of the way to sort of pay people enough and get them to work with you?
Yeah, the first film that I did was in I shot on an XL1. It's not even on my IMDb, but I did complete it. I did screen it. I had professional actors in it. Benito Martinez, who is Captain Acevedo on The Shield, is working on a bunch of stuff right now. He was a friend of mine. We were touring children's theater as actors, and I asked him to be in my film. He was shooting a show called Rampart at the time, and now it was actually going to be changed to The Shield. And so I asked him to come in for a day. He played a doctor. The first one, I did not pay anybody. It was all volunteer. Actually, I take that back. I paid another one of my leads, who was a professional actor by the name of East Carlo, an older gentleman who played a grandfather. But I would say with the first film that I absolutely got everybody got paid was my first official film, which came after I had done my first unofficial film, then a series of short films, and then I did my first official film. Everybody got paid on that.
There you go. Sorry, I didn't clean my lens before we started.
Everybody got paid on that, and my editor was in Mexico City, and I got flown out to Mexico City for 3 weeks to work on the final cut of the film.
A lot of times filmmakers will see somebody like I don't know, Wes Anderson or somebody else, and or somebody that comes out like Tarantino or somebody, and their first film is so awesome. But really sometimes it's the first film we see. It's not necessarily the first film that they ever made.
Right.
But do you ever feel like when you see like a first time filmmaker or a filmmaker we just talk about, and they just come out the box like Hard Eight or Reservoir Dogs or Bottle Rocket or something like that? Do you think that's more of an inspiration, or do you think people need to sort of realize that even if that's the first film you see by a director, you don't see the years of hard work that will go into it?
Well, you don't see the years of hard work, but you also don't know who they're connected to. You know what I mean? So, my first official film was $65,000 budget. So, and I was asked to shoot it in 10 days. It ended up shooting in 13 days, but we don't have those kinds of opportunities. Those types of filmmakers have an apparatus behind them already. When they get to that point, how they get there, how they create that apparatus to do such an amazing first film and get a budget and huge stars. I don't know what the answer is to that. That's never worked that's never been my journey.
Right.
So I can't say that, I was probably inspired by, my first film was definitely inspired by the same thing as a lot of people, my generation, was Kevin Smith's Clerks and Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi, where I looked at these two films and said, I can do that. Those were more inspiring. Now, the luck in Clerks being able to get seen by, at the time, Harvey Weinstein, Robert Rodriguez got his film to a major agency, their first film's out. That's why those films went beyond
Right.
their small little independent scope. And that requires timing. It requires luck, But
Yeah.
then you got to do your next film and your next film and your next film.
No, we were doing a postmortem for the mayor of Easttown, and I was reading the biography of the writer, and it was like, after like Harvard or Yale, he had an idea for a show, and he reached out to XYZ production company, and they decided to produce it, and that felt like I was like, what? And obviously it was, I don't want to.
Yeah, it makes for a much better story if somebody says, yeah, my first time out, I just got lucky. But, nobody's going to say, well, I know this person and that person, and they got me the right people. You never hear anybody say that. And that's actually more the truth. But that makes a crappy story, right? Like,
Right.
well, I had my uncle and my aunt know so-and-so at so-and-so studio, or has money or has connections. A lot of people in TV, I always say there's a tell for writers in television. Anytime I see a character that's a bartender or a waiter and they're written sort of, not so smart, I always assume that the writers never worked a restaurant job. you know, and they got their gig right out of, you know, PIF,
Right out
or
of film school.
their gig right out of, you know, the Yale School of Drama or whatever, you know, wherever those elite schools produce those writers that get opportunities right out of school.
It's a lot easier to say. It's a lot better story than just saying I am very privileged.
Yes.
And and like you and I think you said this was one of your other interviews that I saw, which was you know, people like me and you don't have the luxury of failing the first time or coming on set and not knowing what we're doing. We expect the degree of difficulty, the margin of error is minuscule for, you know, a Latinx or Afro Latino or a African American or a minority filmmaker, than it would be for what's predominantly been just mostly white male and women that have been making movies for the history of film.
Right. Yeah, and then, you know, when someone does break through, you know, it's they take up a lot of press, which is good, but it gives this false illusion that things have opened up because one person managed to break through, you know, when that's really not the case. It's just that one person, again, may have had the apparatus, which is great. You know, I applaud those people that are people of color that get through the Sundance, get the representation, get the Marvel movie, you know. You know, but those are the exceptions. They're not the rule.
Yeah, and I think people are like, well, it's improving little by little, and I think that's because there's been so much pressure over the last 7 to 10 years that over the last 2 to 3 years, there's actually been a trickling of actually more acceptance of projects, more green lighting of projects. But at the end of the day, we still have maybe one or two shows that are about Latinos by Latinos that are on major broadcast networks, and a couple of trickled here and there that'll come on for a season or two, they'll get canceled, etc. So I think my dream is for eventually Latino directors to just be able to make shitty movies and not nobody nobody question it, right?
I mean, yeah, the bar seems to be kind of higher for us, you know, and I hear that a lot, you know, but there are a lot of people in this that make a really good living, that don't have any experience, and get into this business, and don't have any talent and get into this business, so make a good living. But, you know, I would say this in terms of actors and acting opportunities. You know, when me and my wife started, you know, there were little to no roles for any Latino actors. That has definitely improved. And so when I hear people complain about it, it's mostly younger actors, but they don't know how it was 20 years ago. They only know about right now. And is there enough opportunity? Maybe not, but there's certainly a lot more than there were when we started. But what hasn't changed is behind the camera. And in spite of some movies and TV shows and a lot of organizations, the DGA puts out the same numbers every year in terms of directors of people of color who are directors in film and television. And then the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative does the same thing. And it just hasn't moved. It has not moved in 20 years. So there's a lot of talking about it where maybe we didn't talk about it before, but, you know, real change happens when people start hiring us.
Yeah, I've been invited to some fellowships or some mentorship programs. You know, I was I mean, for a couple of them, one of them was Fox, and they were like, "Yeah, you can come out to Virginia for 2 weeks, and we're going to give you like a $300 a week stipend for like 4 weeks, and you're going to shadow a director and learn the trades." And I was like, "Why don't you just hire me as like a B unit director and let me just go do that? Like, I don't need to learn how to direct."
And I'll say this, you know, these directing programs that are out of the DGA, been around for over 15 years. I would say, though, now people, if they get into those programs, which are very difficult to get in, they are getting now opportunities, because they would always say the same thing. Well, we're going to put you in this program, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be directing an episode of television, right? But I will say now there's pressure to say, well, you guys have a program. Why aren't you guys are putting people through programs, but nobody's getting hired? I know several directors that have gone through programs and never got hired, and now people are breaking through in that way. But I will say that for me, I got onto a shadowing opportunity through my own hustle. You know, I got onto the set of One Day at a Time, and the way I did it was, you know, I read the trades, I pay attention. When I heard that show was being done and Norman Lear was doing it, and it was going to be an all Latino cast, I was like, I got to get on this show. You know, there are very few of us behind the directors if they're looking for that. And so I was telling my wife I was upset, and I'm like, I have no agents, so I'm not going to be able to get in front of anybody for a general meeting. And she's like, well, why don't you just write Norman Lear? He must have a production company. And I'm like, yeah, that'll work. And so I did. I wrote him a letter, and I sent him my 5th film, Counterpunch, because it was a Cuban boxing film. And I said, look, even if you don't call me in, there are a lot of great Cuban actors in this film that maybe you haven't seen yet, and you can call in for a thing. It sounds so naive and lame. Well, 3 weeks later, his head of production called me and had watched the film and had said, yeah, man, do you have any experience with 3-camera technique? And I said, no, but a Latino invented the 3-camera technique, so it's in my blood. And he laughed at that and was like, well, let's continue the conversation. And as they were in production, I kept in contact with that particular individual, and he got me onto the set of One Day at a Time, and I got to shadow a legendary television director, Phil Lewis, and I got to learn a lot. It didn't turn into an opportunity, but the showrunner, Gloria Calderon-Kellett, she was amazingly graceful to me, and she offered some great advice, and she had to fight to get her own opportunity to direct on that show. So and it's her show. So, but I'm at a point now, brother, where I have no problem asking people for opportunities, or at least for a meeting. And I think a lot of our people in this industry have a tendency to think that something's going to get offered to us. It's not.
Right. Well, shout out Tia Glow, because she's on Twitter, and she's always helpful with young writers and stuff like that. And shout out James Martinez.
Great advice, and very transparent and honest.
And shout out James Martinez from Breaking Bad, who also plays the baby daddy on that show. He's from Queens, New York, and he's Colombian, so he's from my neighborhood. And I got to meet her when they did One Day at a Time here a couple of years ago at the festival. I guess my experience was probably about 4 or 5 years ago,
right?
And it felt more performative than anything else, and I just felt there was all these programs that say, and I'm not a young kid. I'm not 25. I'm in my 40s. I'm judged against every other filmmaker that exists. I don't want to be put in that box with like these people that are. I have 2 features and 15 shorts under my belt. I don't look at my reel, get me in a room, give me a chance, tell me yes or no. That's it.
Brother, that's and to me that's the easy thing. I mean, if they really want to change this industry, it's getting people like you in the room, getting people like me. Look, there's a ton of filmmakers I know, and we're kind of being overlooked to younger people who are just starting out and are going through a program now. So the programs to me are kind of flip-flopped now in terms of finding talent. We don't. And I'm talking about our people, I'm talking about Latinos that are in the industry. They're not drawing from the independent film world like the African American community does for their shows, and the Anglo shows do for their shows. You see it all the time. That's where they pull from, are from the independent film world, and we just don't. You very, very rarely see that. I would say Ava DuVernay. I always promote her because she gave like 3 or 4 Latina directors that I'm very familiar with their work. I don't know them personally, and I don't like to mention their names because I don't know if they're comfortable with the argument that I'm making. But the argument I'm making is that Ava DuVernay gave these women their first opportunity to direct television. No Latino showrunner or producer in television has done that. They'll go to organizations, they'll be on panels, they'll talk about diversity and inclusion for the LA Times, but they're not hiring anybody.
No, yeah, it's definitely, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
it felt like, hey, we just did this study and we need more Latinos in front of the camera, and we're over here like, yeah, okay, ready.
We're like just right here, right, and you've worked with a lot of actors. I've worked with a lot of actors that have moved on to bigger and better things. The problem is actors have no power, no influence. So I mean, I've had actors call me from sets of TV shows upset because some brand new director doesn't know what he's doing, is given an opportunity to direct an episode of Fear the Walking Dead in Mexico, where I shot 3 films, and I've actually worked with that crew. And they're like, he's like, I'm dying inside. I want to go to the showrunner and say, I know a kid that can come in here and do this.
Yeah, like I said, direct the B unit. Let me go, let me do some pickup shots. Like, it's not that hard to just like give. It's like either it's got to be a young 22-year-old kid that went through a program, or some mediocre 45-year-old that did like some horrible movie, and they're like, well, he's got experience. I'm like, well, yeah, like you said, they're not pulling up from the minor leagues as other sort of cultures are.
Right.
It's almost like we went from being discriminated against because of our race to being discriminated against because of our age, right? Just a little bit of
I think there's a little bit of that. I asked a few, and then COVID is actually going to set us back even further. I've talked to people that are in the industry, and they're very positive. And I was at Clubhouse last year. Clubhouse was a bit, or this past summer, Clubhouse was the spring, Clubhouse was a big thing. But I knew some of the people that were doing the Clubhouse rooms, and they're very positive. But then I had their information. I would ask them, I go, look, are you seeing, less and less people of color coming in because of COVID, they're not as open to bringing in new people? And they both told me the same thing. Yeah, this is gonna hurt us, because they're not going now. They have an excuse to say, well,
yeah,
we're going with a director that we know is vaccinated, or whatever it is,
what have you. I don't want to dwell too much on that, because obviously we all understand the issues that are happening in the industry. But it is good to talk with somebody, like I said, that's been struggling against it for the last several years and still keeps pushing along. So I appreciate the fact that you're out there, and I appreciate the fact that I sent you some info about me, and you're like, hey man, you made it multiple films, you're actually doing it, keep at it. And I was like, yeah, I am. So I appreciate that feedback. The LA Harbor to Hollywood. I saw that somewhere else, and I was like, I'm not going to call this podcast that. It's a little too cliche. It's a little too on the nose, but it made sense because you're growing up in the shadow of this industrial part, very working man type in LA. When you're a kid, you grow up there. You're in the city. I saw an interview somebody else that I think it was Rami Malek or something, where he's like, he grew up next to Hollywood, and he felt like Hollywood was so far away, and he didn't realize it was like a 10-minute drive. I think he said that on SNL last week.
Oh wow.
And but growing up in that area, what point? Because I grew up in Queens, and there's a lot of filmmaking in New York as well, as obviously. But when I talk to my friends when I was a kid, middle school, early high school, and they're like, "What do you want to be?" and I'm like, "I want to make movies." They'd be like, fuck, what the fuck? You're gonna fucking drive a cab like your dad, or do this, or what have you." But when do you, growing up in that area, allow yourself to start dreaming about the arts, about acting, about being creative? Where does that start for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say I'm gonna try to give you the cliff notes of this, but I would say I was just thinking about that today. Like for this master class, I was preparing something. I'm like, what's the first thing? When did I first start blocking? Blocking a scene. And the first scene I ever blocked, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and it was with the little green army men. I blocked out a whole battle with those green army men, and then I graduated to GI Joe, right?
Right.
And block scenes with the GI Joes, and that's storytelling. You know what I mean? And we would create our own stories, kids growing up. But I would say around 8 years old,
If your mom moved them, you got mad because she was messing with continuity, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I grew up, watching the A-Team and stuff like that. But I would say I produced my first show when I was 8 years old, and it was a suppressed memory. When I was writing the book, it popped up, and I was like, "This is how I'm going to open my book." But I don't know what possessed me to do that. I was really bored. Actually, what had happened was watching the Little Rascals. You remember the Little Rascals, the original Little Rascals, like from the 20s and 30s?
Mm-hmm.
And they would always do like these elaborate shows with whatever they had, right? And I think I was inspired by that. So I produced my first show. A friend of mine was a pop locker at the time. I brought him in. I think I did magic tricks, and did it in my garage. I charged everyone $0.25, and it was nerve-wracking. I wasn't a performer, but I was doing something and basically, but enjoyed it at the end. I was exhilarated. And then I transferred schools out of my neighborhood. I was still living in the neighborhood, but transferred schools, and I became very introverted. And I was just a daydreamer for a long time. And creatively, I didn't do anything from the time I was 10 until Probably I was 17 when I took a Shakespeare class, and that kind of reawakened that. I did a speech, and I was just a punk, kid. And this teacher picked a speech, and I read it, and I understood it, and that gave me such confidence because nobody in class could understand Shakespeare and was bored by it. And then I started thinking about maybe I want to be an actor, and I had found. My dad actually had found I wanted to go to school outside of Wilmington, so I didn't want to go to the Harbor College, community college, but I took theater there over the summer when I was still a senior in high school. And so I was doing little performances here and there, and but that was literally how it started. And then I found the acting academy and at LA City College, and that was a 3-year program, and that surrounded me with artists. And I still didn't even consider myself an artist at that point. All these people knew who Tennessee Williams was, and all these different playwrights and plays. I knew nothing. But one thing, I met a girl, and then the other thing was I was really excited to be around that kind of creative energy. I wasn't around that growing up at all. I mean, there were friends of mine in high school that had a cable access show, and I would tag along with them. But I was not. I was too self-conscious. I wasn't confident enough in myself to pursue anything like that. The academy was like the army for me. It broke me down and it built me back up to when I got out, I was ready to do anything, whether it was produce a play, produce a film, anything.
Just because you mentioned that, one of the when I was from when I was a kid, I remember walking around thinking about ideas for movies that I wanted to make. All my life, I was like, I have this idea. I still have some of those ideas in my mind. But the first time I actually acted on it was when I was in high school, and there was a girl that I was talking to, and
It's always a girl, right?
yeah, and we were in the homeroom together, and they came around and they're like, "Hey, anybody want to sign up for play production as an elective?" And she's like, "I'm going to do play production. You should do play production with me." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to write down for play production." First year, I'm the fog guy. We did Dracula, and I'm the guy, and I'm the fog machine. So I'm behind the scenes in the stage, getting to know how the theater works and stuff like that. The next year, as a junior, I ended up the lead actor got kicked out, so I ended up having to do the lead role. My senior year,
Play.
huh?
What play were you the lead in?
It was Little Me. It was a Neil Simon musical, and I had to sing 7 songs as 7 different characters. It was a musical. It was a musical that he wrote for Sid Caesar. And then the next year I did The Odd Couple, and I was Oscar. And after that I was like, okay, I'm an actor now. So I did acting and improv in Manhattan, New York, and then I was like, what I really want to do is direct. So that's a similar sort of path to that you were saying.
Very similar, man. That's why.
But yeah, when you were saying, so you obviously you start there, you get in, you start being more surrounded by actors and artists, and you feel more comfortable in your skin. I would imagine, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And then you start with the stage, and do you feel that in an alternate universe you could have been happy continuing to write for the stage, or did you always think that you would go to screen?
No, I knew that I wanted to go to screen, and partly because, we were doing these one-act plays at the Two Roads Theater in Studio City. My wife and I were producing them with actor friends that we knew, and they were just such incredible experiences, and once it's gone, it's gone. It's kind of the beautiful and tragic thing of theater. It's not lasting, and I wanted to do something that if I was going to put that time, energy, and, I was financing my own things into something, then I wanted it to at least be something I can go back and look at. I mean, that film that I shot, my very first film that I shot on an XL1 is on a VHS tape that I can watch right now if I wanted to, but I couldn't pull up any play that I've done, and then go back to it. It's just pictures or memories. So there's something beautiful about that. But film is, yeah, exactly. So, but film is forever. It's not cliche. That is the truth. And I recently did a online screening of my first official film, Sideways, with another podcast, and it was an incredible experience. There were people in Birmingham, England, that were on that podcast watching that film. Couldn't do that with a play that I did 20 years ago.
Right. When when you move, okay, so you get your first film, you go through that entire rigmarole of producing it, editing it, um, and then you have to sit down and decide. So did you are you I mean, because you said it, if you make your second film, then you're a filmmaker. If you just stop there, then what, you're a hobbyist, right? So was there ever a doubt that you would go on, or was there anything where you were like, yeah, I knew I'm a director, I know I want to do screen, but maybe this isn't for me, maybe I want to go focus on acting more, or were you hooked at that moment?
No, I was hooked at that moment. I wouldn't say I started questioning myself as a filmmaker until my seventh.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's when it was getting really hard financially. Um, I had found myself in a financial situation that I was, 5 years prior, and I'm like, I'm on this hamster wheel of trying to be a filmmaker and provide for my family at the same time. And it's not, because I am a husband, I am a father, I have 2 kids, and my incredible wife, who's never wavered in her support of me, even when she should have said, you know what, enough of this.
She could have wavered a little bit.
What's that?
She could have wavered a little bit.
I remember pleading with her one time, like, just tell me to quit and I'll quit. And she's like, I'm not going to tell you that. She's like, you have to quit on your own. She's like, but even now, like after my seventh, she's like, I know it's hard. She's like, but why are you going to quit now when you have all this behind you? And I was like, because no opportunities are coming my way. Like if I stop right now, everything stops. It only keeps going because I'm going, and there's a certain point where you're just tired. So I would say there was definitely about a year there. And it was funny because there was a kid from my hometown, Wilmington, who was a filmmaker, and he reached out like you and wanted to do a documentary on my process of doing the 7th film. So he called me up on a really bad day where I was having a really bad self-doubt day. And he's like, hey, what are you doing right now? I'm in the neighborhood. I want to catch you. I go, all right, come on over. I'll give you the real deal, man. And he got some really raw stuff from me. And he's
Wow.
like, you were so inspiring today.
Wow. And you felt like you were just like putting it all out there, right?
Yeah, because I try to be honest in my filmmaking. I try, there are a lot of filmmakers I've met over the years. It's very, and I just have to say, man, it's just very refreshing for me to talk to someone like you. I don't connect with a lot of filmmakers. There's always some ego involved. There's always some pretension involved. You know what I mean? And I'm like, they think their stuff is so precious, and they front, and I hate that, man. And for me, I just got to be open. Is all my stuff good? No, but like what I tell people is, yeah, you can pick apart some of my films, but I have a body of work, so you can't say all my work's not good. You know what I mean? Whereas someone may have one film and maybe it's brilliant, but you've had one film for 10 years. Right.
You're still living off of that.
Yeah, and not even living off it in a financial way, but not living off it in terms of it's the only thing driving your ego.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that because, like I said, I try to come at this, like during the pandemic. Basically, I did a podcast before called Indie Apocalypse. We did about 100 episodes, which was specifically about the process of indie filmmaking, using San Diego as a case study, and that was a few years back. And then this is more of a personal thing. That's why I call it like Fireside Chats, because it's me wanting to connect with people. And during the pandemic, I was stuck in a house because I'm a caregiver. I got a 91-year-old pops that I'm taking care of, so I was pretty much locked in, and this was my way to sort of have conversations, have some human contact, talk to people about stuff that I'm interested in, whether that's film, art, other things, learning from other people. And I never want to come at people from a place of, like I'm some hot shit. I'm a filmmaker. I like to talk to other filmmakers, and I'm open to all the critique and feedback from other filmmakers because I just want to be better.
And that's really what it's about, man, but like, if we can't connect on this level, I don't know how people expect to connect at a higher level, and for me, it's all about that. If someone reaches out to me and they're cool in terms of how they reach out, because sometimes I get the guys, they're like, hey, can you teach me how to be a filmmaker? And I'm like, no, I can't. You don't even know what you're asking me right now. Or an actor reach out, hey, put me in one of your movies. I'm like, I don't know you. You come to an audition. No, I don't audition. Or, I'll get something like that. So, I always go by the approach, when someone says, hey, I'd like to talk to you, it'd be cool to chat, talk shop, as it were. Yeah, so like I said, I just appreciate the realness, but it's hard. It's hard to connect with with fellow filmmakers when there's so much ego involved, and
Yeah, no, it's tough. And I use San Diego as a case study because there's different filmmaking groups and stuff like that. And when you're the director, when you're the editor, when you're the director at this level, you're basically the top of the food chain. You're also the producer, so it's hard for you to also deal with other alphas and other people that are top of their groups. The actors, they get to play around with everybody.
Right.
They get to jump around, work with you, work with me, work with us. But for us
Right.
to be able to communicate or something like that, it's almost like it's like a sit down.
Yeah, though, like, sometimes I'll get insulted when an actor that I've worked with works with a filmmaker that like is not really good, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" Now I'm insulted. Like,
Yeah, no, because they have
you
they
didn't want
have to.
to just work with anybody. You don't care.
Yeah, they have to at some point because they need that real footage.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We are live talking with Kenneth Castillo. You can follow him on Twitter at Cholo Chaplin, and you can find him if you just search for Kenneth Castillo. I want to remind everybody that's tuned in that you can follow us if it's your first time listening or watching us. Make sure you follow us on Facebook.com/2am burrito so you can get notified when I go live and post about our films that are coming up. Twitch.tv/2am burrito as well as YouTube.com/2am burrito. The organizations that I work with and support, Mr. Kenneth has worked with one of the actors, Jose Yenke was in one of his films. He has an organization called Arts for a Better Tomorrow, artsbt.org. They're helping youth in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Tijuana deal with trauma through the arts. So that's one of the organizations that we work with, and obviously we want to keep supporting them as well. I wanted to take a look at your Zizzle reel, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Let's check it out.
All right.
There's Jose. All right. Very cool feel, man.
You have my other reel, my 4-minute reel playing there.
Oh yeah, the other one's coming in. When you look back, because you had told me I saw your reel and you liked it, and I was like, you know what, let me sit back, and I took a break from work, and I was like, I'm gonna play my reel and watch it again, and criticizing myself and stuff. But when you sit back and watch sort of the stuff, and obviously I give you much props because you've been telling our stories, and when I say our, I don't necessarily mean just Latino Chicano, because I'm in Southern Cal, I'm Colombian, but obviously I'm surrounded by Mexicans and Chicanos and where I live. I'm from the might as well be Mexican tribe. But
that's a good one. I like that.
But I've been accepted as one of their own. But when you look at that, do you have like a damn, I did that moment, or do you like, man, I could have done that better? Or what's the first thing that comes into your mind when you rewatch your old stuff? Like you said, if you popped in that VHS, do you feel pride? Do you wish you could go back and do it again better? Or what's the emotions like when you look at your older work?
Wow, that's a great question, man.
Every time somebody
I guess
says
I guess there's two things.
Go ahead.
I guess there's two things. I feel I don't ever feel nostalgia, but I guess there's three things I feel. One is just, wow, I've done some work, because sometimes you feel like you know, did anything I do mean anything, because I've done so much work, and, you know, as a filmmaker, you're not where you want to be. But so I that's one thing I get from it. And the other thing is, you know, I really want to do that again.
Like,
I want to be, you know, sometimes with looking at some of the people too, like I would love to work with Jose Yankee again. I'd love to work with Yvonne Cole again, Danny Trejo. Stephen Bauer wasn't in that clip. He's in my other reel, but I got to work with Stephen Bauer, Academy Award nominated actor. I look back on that. I've worked with a lot of my heroes. You know, Pepe Serna is picture me with him at the end. He was in a proof of concept that I'm trying to get made into a feature. So, you know, I try to look at my journey in that way. You know, I've done enough to write a book.
hey. What is the I want to talk about the book for a little bit, but you mentioned earlier something about the casting process, and I wanted to touch on that as well. Because when you're CEO, filmmaker, written and directed by, and it's your show, you're also deeply involved in the casting process, right? And you put out a casting notice, and people send you an email says, "Me film, what time show up?"
Right.
and you're like, and they don't send a picture or a headshot or even a selfie or nothing, and they're like, "Hey, they told me you were making a movie. Where is it? When do I get there?" "Oh,
Yeah.
all right." And then, you
It's gonna be on
know,
Netflix, right?
yeah, it's gonna be on Netflix, right? "Oh, how much am I getting paid?" "Oh, you're just feeding me burritos. That's it." "Oh, okay." So when did you decide to sort of take more ownership of that process? Because I know that I've casted for films and had auditions, cast for films and had auditions, and people have come in, and I always say I usually only have people read for one or two parts, even if I already have somebody in mind with that, because I just want to see, you know, I like to see actors that show up having made choices that are beyond the page. You know, like I had somebody that auditioned for my movie Slapworthy, and I knew that the lead role was going to somebody else, but I had him read for the role, and he had made these decisions, and he had a pocket protector, and he had like a lisp, and he had made all these choices about the character that were outside of the blurb that I sent them. And I was like, I want this person in my film. And I had a couple of people like that. And then I ended up writing a whole section of the film where I had these little parts for these people that I wanted to make sure I had in there. Do you ever find yourself sort of wanting to add a part here and there? And how do you approach and taking ownership of that process yourself?
Well, for me, it was like, having been an actor, like I hated the casting process. I was like, how do you choose from these 2 pages when I'm reading with someone who doesn't even know this world? You know what I mean? So I grew up with a very negative impression of casting directors. You know, for me, it was like nobody grows up to be a casting director. So I've never used a casting director for any of my films. 7 films, I've never used a casting director. But I did develop a process where the actor could feel good about them coming in and giving their best shot. Oscar Torre, who's an actor that I work with in a film I did called Counterpunch, he said to me, "Oh, so basically what I do is I'll bring them in for a certain part, and then if I see them if they come in and they're not good in that part, but they might be good for something else, then I'll have them read for that. I'm never like, oh, you're not right for this part. I'm always open to see, especially if they're good, but they just might be in the wrong part. I will have them read for something else, you know, that they're totally not prepared for. And then I'll bring them in for a callback. But my callbacks, I run like an acting workshop, and I will mix and match people because I want to see how the relationships play out. And that's one thing I always get from my film is just like, I really believe the relationships between the characters. That to me is more important than anything. So I want to make sure that if I have this family, that they look, feel, sound like a family. And so what Oscar Torre said to me, he's like, you know, the thing was, when I left your audition process, I felt like even if I didn't get it, I felt like I had an opportunity to give it my all. It wasn't just some 5-minute read and then I left, you know? So, you know, and that's how I do that. I cast through that way. I also cast with utilizing the actors I've worked with in the past. And I say, look, you're not right for this part. You know somebody who is. That's how I got in contact with Yvonne Cole, an actor I work with, Gary Perez. I produced a short film for him, and he's an actor that I have a lot of respect for. I said, look, I'm looking. He came in and actually auditioned for a film for Counterpunch. And he said, hey, I know an actress that would be great for the grandmother. Her name's Yvonne Cole. And she's been in the business a lot, but she doesn't get a lot of recognition. Of course, Yvonne Cole's gone off to do a lot of television now. But I got to meet her, and she was the first one we cast in that film. She was at our first read-through when the funding fell through the first time. And then when we got the funding for the second time, we never lost track of her. And getting Stephen Bauer, getting Danny Trejo, getting some of the higher profile guys, it was just a matter of my producers using their connections and people they knew to get the scripts to them, because we were confident in the script, even though we didn't have the money. The agents are going to be concerned about the money, but the actors are going to be concerned about the story and the part. And so my thing was always get it, when we're looking for people who are quote unquote stars, try to get the script in their hand. Let them read it so they go to their agent and say, I want to play this part. I don't care what the pay is, you know.
And casting Danny Trejo against type doesn't hurt, right?
No, I took a lot of pride in that because I had known his story and history for years. There was a documentary done on him, even before the most recent one was done, but there was a documentary done on him about 15 years ago. Never got distribution. I saw it in a film festival. And I had known a lot about him. And when we were writing the part of Manny Navarro in Counterpunch, which is a crisis counselor, I said, it would be great if we can get Danny Trejo to play this part. We didn't have him. We wrote it for him, and we ended up getting him. And in independent filmmaking, sometimes you just put it out there and magic happens like that, you know?
Yeah, I subscribe to the ask the prettiest girl out first. You never know what's going to happen, and then you move on from there. But
the only time I've been lucky too is I did ask the prettiest girl out, and we've been married now for over 20 years. So
there you go, man. Congratulations on that. Which one's tougher, the 20-year marriage or the 20-year filmmaking career?
Well, for me, it would definitely be the filmmaking career, but for her, it's definitely the marriage.
Which one's harder, having a filmmaking career or being married to a filmmaker, I guess would be the question for her.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
they were boring, and that was the promise I made her on our wedding day.
what is the process of realizing that you have enough stories or you have enough wisdom that you want to share or enough anecdotes that you think, you know what, I could put this into a book? When did that idea start to germinate in your head?
That's a great question, man. It was actually 2 filmmaker friends of mine within the same week that would reach out to me and say, hey, man, I'm having an issue with this. I'd love to get your advice. Can we meet for coffee and talk? And I'm like, yeah. And I would always give them advice, but it always came in with a story. Like, well, this is what happened to me on my 3rd film and this is how I handled it, or this is how I should have handled it. And one of them was like, man, you really should write a book about your experiences. And I'm like, I'm not quote unquote a successful Hollywood filmmaker, even though I've made several films and they've gotten distribution and the whole 9. I'm not considered that. So who would buy that? He's like, well, that's what's inspiring about it, brothers. You're not just making one film and hoping that's going to become El Mariachi for you. You're still going, and you have a lot of experience and a lot of, I think, people say. Another filmmaker friend of mine, same week, said the same thing. So I thought, and I was in that space that I told you earlier. I was working on my 7th. I was struggling. I didn't have any other ideas in terms of scripts at the time. So I started writing something, but it was very angry, and it was where I was at that point. And I called it "Fuck Film." Fuck Film School was what the title of the book was, and it was basically me telling the filmmaker, "You don't need film school. This is what you should do." But it was just very bitter and very angry because that's where I was. And then it evolved into a celebration of what I've done, coming from Wilmington. And with no contacts, with no connections, and no artistic background, and doing 7 feature films and working with some of my heroes, I thought that was worthy. And then it finally evolved into, I wanted my kids to understand things that I was going through as they were growing up that maybe they didn't understand. I never brought my frustrations home. I always tried to be available for them, always. I never brought my frustrations from my job because I had a job at the time, bartending, and then the frustrations with being a filmmaker. When I was with them, I was with them. So they're going to read the book and go, holy shit, Papa, you did all this while you were raising us. And as I would take them to school, I'd go to my editors. we'd edit. I go back, pick them up, bring them home, get ready for work, go bartend, come home at night, and then write. That's been their entire existence, and a lot of it they didn't know. So they'll be probably really. At least I know those two, which is who I'm writing it for at that point. They'll be intrigued.
Know your audience, right?
Mhm.
What if I put a full bar in front of you? What mixed drink could you make with your eyes closed?
Oh my gosh, Sazerac.
Oh, okay. What is that? That sounds important.
Drink out of New Orleans. It's a 1920s cocktail.
Okay.
It's made with rye, Peychaud's bitters, which is like this bright red bitters made from herbs, a sugar cube, water, and absinthe. And it's
Ooh,
yes,
you had me at absinthe.
favorite cocktail to drink and make.
I'm gonna order that at next time I go to a bar and feel
Make
fancy.
sure you're at a bourbon bar when you order it.
At a bourbon bar. Okay, next time I'm at a bourbon bar, I'm ordering that. I sometimes when I'm feeling fancy, I'll order a sidecar. And I'll be
Okay.
like,
Yeah, and if the bartender shakes that drink, then say you want it.
I don't want it.
No, don't shake it.
Don't shake it. Don't stir it. I am not James Bond. So the book. What's the book called, and when do you think? When is it coming out?
It's called Stereotypical: My Filmmaking Journey from the Harbor to Hollywood. Pre-sales are supposed to go up on November 2nd, the Day of the Dead. And then it'll be out 2 months after that.
Well, obviously, once it's up, let me know so we can promote it, or you can come back and
I'll be hitting you up.
come back on. We can do a short segment so you can promote it. I'd love to have you on. So I wanted to kind of do a couple of short things here, and then I have a couple of bits, and then we'll let you go, Kenneth. But do you feel? I mean, this is sort of a cliched question, but when I feel like as an independent filmmaker, the role of the director on an indie film is a problem solver.
Yes.
It's basically, my third lead flaked on me. She says she has a car accident, but who knows what happened to her. So we're gonna have to add those lines to another character or cut it out completely, fix it out. My sound guy is running late, so we're gonna do the B-roll first, where we don't need sound and stuff like that. Our camera guy got sick. All right, guess what? We got sound. We're gonna shoot it on the iPhone. Like it's all about not wasting the day, in my opinion. Do you agree? And what's your go-to advice for like young filmmakers or people making their first film?
I always say, I agree with everything you just said. We're definitely the problem solvers. But what I also say, the advice I give to filmmakers is the worst thing that a director can be given for their film, whether it's a short film or a feature, whatever it is that you're shooting, the worst thing that you could be given is everything you need.
Right.
Because once you have everything you need, there's no struggle, and independent filmmaking is struggle, and the creativity and the magic comes out of that struggle. So you just have to embrace the struggle. You know what I mean? If you're trying to make something perfect, I don't know what that is. You know what I mean? A lot of moments that I got on camera came out of chaos. So it's not to say that I'm not organized or not prepared, but when you're an independent filmmaker, you don't have the resources sometimes. So you're thinking on the spot, and you have to make the best decision with what you have at that time. But you do have to make a decision. And so, that's the other thing. You cannot be, but that's also the reason I like directing, man. It's like, it's nonstop. It's a complete and total engagement in my brain for, 12 to 16 hours. And for a brain that doesn't shut off, that's heaven. It's hell for my wife when I'm in production, because I'm just not here. I'm in my head thinking of what I have to do for the next day or next week. Problem solving, like you said, constantly. But nothing prepared me more for answering questions and having kids. So I don't know what the answer is a lot of the times when they ask me questions, but I know the answers when I'm on set.
Yeah, and then it's usually the other thing I always like to say, is obviously at the end, if it's written and directed by, or if your name on it, it's your art. So what you decide to put out there, whether it's casting choices, story choices, is up to you. And I think the only thing that I think is different now for filmmakers more recently is you just have to think a little bit more about the choices that you're making, because it's your art and you're going to decide what you put out there, but once you put it out there, it's the world's to judge, you know? So
Yeah.
you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to stand by your art or understand the criticism. The other thing is always obviously to let people that are better at their jobs do their jobs. You know, so if you have somebody that's an experienced sound person, an experienced DP, Oscar Velasquez is a brilliant DP here in San Diego that I use, and I remember one time we were shooting a scene in a gym, and one of the walls, two of the walls were covered with mirrors. And
Oh,
we were shooting the scene in this ring and stuff with that. And I'm like, all right, I'm blocking it. And I just block it and I let him see it. And I say, here, I'm gonna block it for you. This is what's happening. This is the action. He's like, cool, I got it. He sets up the shot. I'm never like, move it to the left, move it to the right.
right.
I stay the hell out of his way. One guy that's on set that had been, you know, on some movie sets before, he comes in, he's like, hey, when he turns the camera, you're going to see the reflections in the mirror. And I was like, if he doesn't look worried, I'm not worried. And I have a relationship with him where if he's behind the camera and he looks, he's like, I already know he's not happy with something.
Right.
And I'm like, what's up, Oscar? What do we need to do? And he's like, it's not right, this and that. So let people who are better at their job than you are do their job and help you. I always allow a collaborative environment where people can come in and give ideas and suggestions, but you're the director, the buck stops with you. So you can take people's advice, but you have to make your decision.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and I'm the kind of guy that I talk with everybody on set, but sometimes that can be a bad thing. I'll talk with the script supervisor, I'll talk with, you know, my assistant director, obviously, but I talk with everybody, the PAs, and sometimes that's a bad thing because if I'm too down to earth, then it's like then I start getting suggestions. Shot if you did this because I kind of break that aura. Sometimes it depends. I'm just gonna plug my computer in before I lose my battery.
Please go ahead. No, we're don't worry, man. We're live here with Kenneth Castillo, director. You can watch if you can go to Kenneth Castillo Films. You can look for him on YouTube. You can look for him on Twitter. He's got a book coming out about his filmmaking journal. We are live. We're talking about the genre. We're gonna be talking a little bit about gangster movies in a minute. Spoiler alert. If you're watching us today, make sure that you guys are following us across all platforms and following us for when we go live. Facebook.com/2mburrito, Twitch.tv/2mburrito, YouTube.com/2mburrito. And even though we're streaming live across all platforms right now, the audio only version will be on all your podcasting platforms tomorrow morning: Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Bullhorn, Alexa, everywhere else. Just, you know, hey, you can do this. Alexa, play the 2 a.m. Burrito podcast. Let's see if she does it. Oh, she's sleeping. Damn robot. I'm just kidding. So make sure you check us out. So the book is coming out in a couple of months. Your 7 features in, and now a masterclass.
Yes.
So were you approached by this? Is this something you always thought you had in you, or how did this process come about?
No, I was reached out to by Chicano Hollywood, which I believe you're familiar with. They're not on Twitter, but they're on Instagram and Facebook, and their audience has been growing. There you go. Yeah, Chicano Hollywood. Johnny Murillo reached out to me, just like you did, and said, "Hey, man, I'm doing a couple of things, and I'd love to talk to you about it." And this was one of them. And he's like, "Would you be interested in teaching a master class about directing and writing?" And I was like, you know, I've never done that before, but I really liked him. I really liked what he was doing. I liked that it was focused on our community, and so I said, yeah, man, let's do it. And so I'm shooting it next Monday.
Nice.
So, yeah, so I'm excited. I've talked to they have a director, obviously, and I talked to her today, and I'm really sounds very organized and professional, and I think people will get some value out of it.
The Mas Chingon class. I love it.
Mas Chingon class, man. He's like, what do you think of this title, man? I go, that's perfect, bro. I go, love it.
$39. That's not bad.
Not bad at all. Pre-launch sale. Then it goes up to $99 after Halloween. So
if you guys are filmmakers or know some filmmakers that are up and coming and that might want to be a part of it, look up Chicano Hollywood, and you're going to be able to find Mr. Castillo's masterclass.
Absolutely, yeah, and he got not just me. He got a great. He has a lot of great people from TV and from other filmmakers. Like he's got some really great people. I'm really excited to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Like I said, as somebody who, and I've talked about this on the pod before, which is, there's Latinos, there's Hispanic, there's Chicanos, especially in Southern California, that choose to identify more as a Chicano, Mexican American than they choose to associate as a Latino, Latinx. At some level, I feel like that's more separating us when we should be more together. But I also understand that we also want to keep our individual subsets and our individual cultures alive. Like like I said, my dad's from Uruguay, my mom's from Colombia.
Right.
I grew up in Colombia and Uruguay and New York, but for the last 20 years, I've been in San Diego, surrounded by Mexicans. My name, our company's called 2 a.m. Burrito. I'm Big Chief Burrito. My girlfriend is Mexican. My stepson is Mexican. I'm sure the majority of the actresses.
What was the term you called yourself? Or what kind of Mexican?
Oh, might as well be Mexican.
Might as well be Mexican. I love that.
Yeah. Because that's why I was like, why'd you get the tattoos? I was like, so I can sell people. No, I'm just, but and then for a while, because there was this whole thing about people that were like claiming cultures and stuff like that. And I was like, I've been in San Diego, I've been in Chula Vista for the last 20 years. If I wasn't more comfortable with myself, I could easily be like, oh yeah, I'm claiming that I'm Mexican or something like that. And like my friends all accept me and my people all accept me, and they like I said, they accept me as one of their own, but they still know that I'm Colombian, So I understand where do you fall on the sort of individual representation versus the group think? Obviously the Latino Hispanic movement is not a monolith, but where do you fall on that sort of discussion?
Well, exactly what you just said. We're not a monolith, and I think the term, if you're referring to the term Latinx, there's two schools of thought on that. The first one is the initial creation of that term, which was for inclusivity, and wouldn't be gender bias. And I understand that, and I think that was a noble thing. But what it's turned into has homogenized a lot of our cultures. So when Hollywood now it's given them a term, a safe word to describe us all. Mm-hmm. So if you go into any pitch meeting now, and I produce, and I'm pitching a Chicano story that takes place in Los Angeles, and they ask me, well, what is Latinx? How does the Latinx audience feel about that? Well, I have to then either take the time to explain to them what Chicano is, or I just say, oh, they love it. And that's what I'm going to say. But it doesn't help.
I got my hand on the pulse, baby. I got my hand on the pulse of the Latinx community.
And it's not to say that when it comes to audience, you have to be more specific, and the Latinx audience is a big audience, right? There's 60 million considered Latinx. Oh, that's all of us under one umbrella in the United States, 60 million. But 40 million of that 60 million identify as Mexican American or Chicano. So when I say Chicano, I'm being very specific. I don't expect people in New York or in Brooklyn to understand some of the stuff that I do. That's why my book is called Stereotypical, because I've been on panels with what I call New York Latino filmmakers, and they say, well, we're tired of seeing the same East LA stories. And I go, what are you talking about? I go, every short film that I see come out of New York that's Latino is about the bodega and the stoop. And, I get all that and the gentrification. I go, it's not like you guys are doing anything more original. I'm just telling my stories, and you're telling your stories, and that's okay. But I always, when I was at the Theater Academy, there was an interesting thing that, one of the theater teachers talked about. He had seen Zoot Suit at the Mark Taper Forum, and when it first came out in 1980, and it ran at the Mark Taper Forum for 2.5 years. And naturally, the progression was to go to Broadway with it. It ran in Broadway for 2 weeks. They didn't understand Zoot Suits and car culture and Chicano culture, so it closed. It didn't open well there, and they thought it would do well because of the Puerto Rican, Dominican, and the Latino population there, and it didn't, because it's not speaking to the same group of Latinos. Exactly. And you saw that within the Heights. In the Heights came out, and they pronounce it as a Latinx all-inclusive story, but people from over here, didn't go and see that film. You know, we saw whatever horror film came out that week because that film spoke more to our community. So there, it's knowing audience, and you know, it's something that Hollywood doesn't really understand. And what sucks is Latinos in Hollywood don't even understand it because they've embraced the term so widely because they don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah, at some point, I think that it's become something that erases some of our cultural identity by making us more, like you said, like a monolith, and it's something that's safe for them to say, so they don't have to worry about, you know, well, this is something that's very specific to Peruvians and or to Colombians or to Dominicans. It's just
Yeah,
blanket, you
I
know.
would say that although I'm a Chicano storyteller, my films are not. I never write Chicano, is what I say. I write
Right.
human beings, but I know it's from my voice, and I also know that I'm going to cast Latino actors or Chicano actors in these parts. You know, when I did Counterpunch, I cast mostly Cuban actors because they were Cuban roles.
Did you cast Javier Bardem as a Cuban?
I don't have the budget for Javier Bardem.
And I'm saying, just putting that, if Javier Bardem wants to play a Latino in my film, I'm gonna let him do it. Number one.
You know what actor that I really love and I would love to work with, and he doesn't get enough credit, and to me he's an amazing actor, is Edgar Ramirez.
Okay.
And he was actually initially cast as Ricky Ricardo, him and Kate Blanchett as Ricky Ricardo and Lucy before Javier Bardem and Nicole Kidman came in, and I was more excited about that cast than I am about this one.
Absolutely.
I love him, but Edgar Ramirez to me is an amazing talent.
Yeah, the other part of that is, you know, just to wrap up the Latinx thing, is that the Hispanic language arbitrarily picks what things are masculine and feminine. You know, this was decisions made years and years ago. You could say La Puerta is feminine, La Casa is feminine, but El Carro is masculine, but Mexicans can say La Troca and they can make the truck feminine again. So,
Right.
so,
But
so,
also,
so
it's not a word that's used. I live in East LA, man.
nobody
Like,
uses that.
no one uses the word here. So to
Yeah.
me, it's like if that's the audience we're trying to reach, we're already using terminology that alienates them.
Absolutely. It's
And
like
I'm not to say though, the intention of the word I get. I'm just saying that it has definitely changed. Its meaning has changed, and Hollywood has taken over its meaning.
yeah, absolutely. And I use it. I mean, I identify as a Latino. I don't like Hispanic because it's where Spic came from. And I identify as a Latino, and I'm going to continue to identify as a Latino, but it doesn't cost me anything when I'm talking about the culture to say Latino, Latinx, Latin. It costs me an extra breath. And if there's somebody there that feels more inclused, I guess, because of that, then I'm okay with it. I don't understand the complete backlash against it because it's
No,
not.
and
But
I don't subscribe to that either. You know, I wrote an article for Daily Chela, which was defending the urban Latino genre, and I used words Latino, Latin, and Latinx in that article. I just, when in referring to myself, I usually refer to myself as a Latino or a Chicano filmmaker.
Shout out Brandon Maxwell, La Chela.
Oh yeah.
All right, cool. I have a couple of quick hitters here, and then we'll let you go here, Kenneth. How do you feel about like short form Instagram and TikTok films? Because I watch some of these little setups that kids do nowadays. Obviously, it's vertical, so it's pissing me off. But the tenets, the basics of storytelling are there in a sort of short form, and do you see that affecting kind of filmmaking and editing going forward?
No, because it is. I had this conversation on a panel I was on with someone who was a content creator. We were debating what, you know, I don't consider myself a content creator. I consider myself a storyteller and a filmmaker. And this particular individual took offense to it, and they said, "Well, what's the difference?" And I said, "Well, here's the difference. You create a 3-minute video in a day, and maybe you'll get 1 million likes for it, right? If it goes viral." I go, I'm trying to create something that takes me 2 years and is 90 minutes long, and I'm trying to get 1 million people to pay $15 for it. That's the biggest difference between what we do. And the other thing is, nobody is going to look back on a 3-minute viral video 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years from now. But we will be talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark. We will be talking about The Godfather. We will be talking about, these types of films. So I feel like it's just a completely separate entity. I don't think one has to do with the other.
All right. You get tapped on the shoulder to make a Charlie Chaplin movie, but they say we want to shoot it in vertical. Hard pass,
Wow.
or you deal with it?
What's the budget?
I don't know. 10 mil.
I'm in.
Say yes first, figure out the logistics later. I like that. All right, it's 2 in the morning. You just finished filming on set. You're on your way home. Taco or a burrito?
Taco, definitely.
All right. So, logging off right now. Project you'd rather do, Cantinflas or Chespirito Bioflick?
Chespirito. I mean, when he died, like it was, they didn't cover it up here, but when Chespirito died, like I was blown away by the response from all of Mexico, all of Latin America. I mean, it was like the Pope died.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He was part of our youth growing up, man.
He's and
Chavo del Ocho, everything.
Chaplin was definitely, subconsciously inspired by that. My kids mostly grew up watching it because they would come to my mother-in-laws, and she only speaks Spanish to them, and they grew up. My kids actually dressed as Chavo and for Halloween.
Nice. Chavo del Ocho. You can remake any one of your films with 10 times the budget that you did the first time. Which one do you choose and why?
Wow. Oh God, it'd be a tie. I'm gonna say Hearts of Men, my fourth film with Jose Yenke. I kept compromising because of budgets. Every day I was coming in and things I was promised by my producer wasn't showing up, and I had to adjust. It's probably one of my most personal scripts. I had an incredible cast, and I just didn't pull it off because I would want to go back to that one, definitely.
All right. And then one last one here, and then we'll get on to a couple of last bits. And recently, there's been a lot of versus battles, hip hop battles. We had KRS-One and Big Daddy Kane. We had Jada Kiss versus. What would be your ultimate West Coast versus if we were doing a West Coast versus with West Coast rappers that you grew up with? Who would you want to see battle each other?
Gosh. Well, I mean, there was already that battle between NWA and Ice Cube. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to see The Game go up against Ice Cube.
Ooh, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That'd be a good one. Good choice. All right, Kenneth, we're gonna get on to a segment that I like to call "Should I Buy This?"
Should I?
All right, the new Batman toys pre-order is out now. the Batman. This motorcycle is looking kind of hot. I'm sorry. It's the
action figure come with it.
What's up?
Does the action figure come with it?
I mean, they have the picture there, right? This is $29 for the Bat bike. You can also get I believe they have the other toys like the Joker. Oh no, not the Joker, the Riddler. This Riddler action figure looks kind of dope. I'm sorry.
Dope. I like that.
And saying, so the question is, should I buy this?
The Batman with the motorcycle?
Yes.
You're not married?
No.
Buy it.
Right. Although when Amazon packets show up, like I had 2 pops over there, my girl was looking at them and she was like, "Are those new?" I was like, "Nah." Yeah. those have been there for a while. They look new.
I just bought Maximilian from the Black Hole, the Disney The Black Hole. And my wife's like, "Do you need this?" I'm like,
"Yes." We play Amazon roulette when a package gets here. I'm like, it could be something I bought you. It could be something I bought for myself. It could be something I bought for the minion. We never know. Gotta open it. All right. Also, we got the Cholo Chaplin shirts.
Oh my gosh, that's my son. He's not that big anymore. He's much bigger.
Unfortunately, only up in XL. I wish you had a 3X there. I'd have that. And then lastly, and should I buy this? The Ursa Mini is going from $9,995 all the way down to less than $6,000. The Ursa Mini Pro 12K. Do you subscribe to? Let me just hire the DP and have him bring his equipment that he's comfortable with. Do you invest in equipment yourself, or
No.
how do you feel about this?
My first camera I bought was an XL1, and now, but I am not, you know, there are short films I've shot on my iPhone and documentaries I've shot on my iPhone because I'm comfortable with that. I'm not a technology person at all, so I will definitely get a DP. Yeah, I mean, I do some camera work on occasion when I see something, or, you know, I already know in my head what I'm doing. They're usually for short films, so they're not for features. I would never shoot my own feature. So it's with the cameras, man. You know, at this point, there's so many. Like my last feature I shot on a DSLR with prime lenses. It looks incredible, you know. And I had filmmakers and DPs swear that I shot it on a Red, and I'm like, no, it was the DSLR. I had a great DP who, you know, it really comes down to the lenses for me, not even the camera body.
Yeah, I get with my producers and people, and they're like, yeah, we're shooting this on a Red Dragon 12, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, cool.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
The money. Look, I want to shoot on Alexa just so I can say I shot on Alexa. But, you know, if I have the money, then great. But, you know, if you're making your first film, you know, just try to find a DSLR will do it. Frick, an iPhone 13 will do the job now. Shoot.
DSLR, get yourself a nifty 50, a 22, and you're good. Yeah. And you're good. Also, and this is something I didn't like necessarily, but I had an editor when we shot a film on 12K, and I sent him the information because I couldn't. I had my PC at the time couldn't push the raw footage.
Right.
And then he looked and he sent me a message. He's like, "Why did you shoot separate close-ups?" And I was like, I don't know, because that's what you do. You shoot the wide, you shoot the over the shoulders, and then if you want, you get your close-ups. And he's like, I just punched in from the main shot.
Right.
And I was like, huh. I was like, so it's getting to the point where you can just point the camera at the room.
At this point, especially at 12K, but the only issue with that is, you know, because when we get to technical, like I said, I'm not an expert, but I always tell people, like, look, if you're looking at 4K, 10K, whatever, I go, you have to be able to have and you're editing yourself, you have to have the power to do that. You know, you're going to have an issue if you're doing 12K and your computer can't hold it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've gotten to the end of this interview, Mr. Castillo. There's just one last step here that we have to go. And it's something that, let me just make sure that everybody knows that that your book is going to be coming out in November, called Stereotypical. They can subscribe to, they can look for Chicano Hollywood and find your masterclass coming up soon. You can where can they find your films right now?
Well, Counterpunch is still on Amazon Prime. It was on Netflix for 2 years, but it's still on Prime. So they can find it there, and they can also find it on iTunes. They'll just hang there probably for a while. I think it might be getting back on Netflix. Sideways, they can find on Amazon on DVD. Ghost Town is at Walmart. That's my second film. Marigold's not out yet. And Thou Shalt Not Kill, I believe, is at Walmart as well.
You've been working on Marigold for a while, though, because I saw some test footage of your site, right? Have you just not gotten that just right?
I could probably do some more to it. I mean, it was a feat. I have screened it. I did go to the Idlewild Film Festival with it. I won an award for it. I'm really holding off to get a distribution on it, and I'm waiting till I can get a buyer for it.
All right, Mr. Castillo, we have one last road to cross here in our interview. It's something that I like to do with all my guests, and it's something that we like to call the bracket bit.
All right, boys and girls, you know what that sound means. It's time for bracket bit. Bracket bit. Bracket bit. Woo, 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 woo. Bracket bit. Bracket bit. Woo, 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 woo.
Fireside chats.
I saw you vibing there to the intro. All right, it's the end of the interview. That means I can light up my spliff because I don't have to focus anymore, and we can have a little fun with something that I like to call the bracket bit. Kenneth, you work in a lot of different genres. One of them is gangster. One of them is that genre, and something that I've experienced as well in my life. So today's bracket bit, I create a list of 32 entrants, and I'm going to give you 2 at a time, and you tell me which moves on. All right.
Oh, wow.
The reasons I create the bracket are my own. The movies I chose are my own. Whatever science or theory or reasoning for your choices, it's completely up to you. Are you ready?
Okay, yeah, this is good.
All right, let's get the music going here. And away we go. I've chosen Gangster's Paradise as our bracket, and this is going to give you 2 gangster movies of different types, and you tell me which moves on. All right? Let's play
Okay.
my boy Kurt's music here. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
There. All right. Yeah, we got the music going. Now we're going. All right. I've decided that The Godfather just as its own would be too popular, so this is Godfather 1, 2, and 3 together as one entry. So you get the 2 Godfathers, but then you get the minus for Godfather 3. I figure that's the only way you say it.
Godfather was really great.
And then if you want to talk about any of these movies, that's why we didn't really talk about a lot of movies. In case you have thoughts on any of this, feel free to expand them and as you wish. So we got Godfather versus a pretty cool gangster flick, Knock Around Guys.
Godfather 2 is probably my second favorite movie of all time, so I got to go with Godfather, man.
I thought about not including The Godfather in the bracket, but I was like, fuck it, we're going. All right.
If it's a Gangster's Paradise.
Yeah. Donnie Brasco or Eastern Promises.
Brother, that's a tough one, man.
He hangs down.
Damn, this is probably going to be the toughest bracket of these two. I'm going to go with Donnie Brasco because I've probably seen it a lot more. Eastern Promises I've seen at least 10 times, but Donnie Brasco I've seen probably 20.
I put them in sort of order and then I randomized them because I didn't want to be too biased.
Yeah.
Donnie Brasco moves on. I'm your best friend, Donnie. Menace to Society or Japanese classic City on Fire.
Definitely going Menace to Society.
Menace to Society.
And early influence.
Once Upon a Time in America or Desperado.
You know, that's an easy one for me, but Once Upon a Time in America.
That's a tough one.
Sorry, Robert, but Once Upon a Time in America is a classic. And it's on Netflix right now.
Wait, is Desperado the same as that's what they changed? Oh wait, that's a separate. I get my mariachis and my desperados mixed up there. Sin Nombre or Boys in the Hood?
Boys in the Hood.
All right. Goodfellas or Leon, the Professional?
That's another tough one. I'm gonna go with Goodfellas, bro.
Goodfellas, it's a tough one. Leon's one of my favorite movies of all time, man.
Oh yeah.
But Goodfellas is a fucking beast. All right, we're going Traffic, Jose Yankees in that one, or Scarface.
Again, love them both, but I'm gonna go with Scarface.
All right, going with the classic so far. Sicario or Reservoir Dogs.
I see Blood In, Blood Out in Sicario.
Oh, sorry. Sicario or Blood In, Blood Out.
Blood In, Blood Out.
Thank you for catching this. Sorry. This is why I wait to smoke till the end of the thing. City of God or Reservoir Dogs.
City of God.
Did you catch that? That's a masterpiece. It's a movie. It's such a masterpiece that I didn't feel that I needed to watch it again.
I've only seen it twice. I won't see it a third time.
That's it. I think it's really hardcore to watch, and it's like you see it once or twice, and you're like, I got it.
Yeah.
It's weird how there's movies like that, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Although I did watch the documentary that they did about all the actors and where they are in their lives later.
That was great, yeah.
That was really, really, really cool. And Reservoirs, obviously, it's a classic, but what are you going to do? Boulevard Nights or Mean Streets?
There's no question on that one, brother. It's Boulevard Nights all the way.
Mi Vida Loca or Pulp Fiction?
Oh, God. I'm going to go Pulp Fiction on that one, man. Mi Vida Loca is a classic, but I'm going to go with Pulp Fiction.
All right. Remember, the bracket bit is created to cause maximum pain. So
okay, well, it's definitely caused me anxiety.
This is feeding me. This, and every time somebody says that's a good question, my hat size goes up a little, one size. All right. On the Waterfront or Italian classic Gomorrah?
On the Waterfront. That was an easy one. Gomorrah was great, but On the Waterfront.
I could have been a contender. Could have been somebody. Untouchables or King of New York?
King of New York.
Training Day or Casino?
I'm going to go with Training Day on that one, man.
Hey, King Kong ain't got shit on you, brother.
That's right.
Bonnie and Clyde Although, is Bonnie and Clyde really a gangster movie? I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
All right,
absolutely.
Bonnie and Clyde or El Mariachi.
People are gonna hate me, but Bonnie and Clyde.
hey, Robert is 0 for 2 on this bracket. he's checking his phone from the set of Spy Kids 11.
Yeah, I guess I can forget about getting invited to direct on Book of Fett.
Hey, man, he's gonna respect you for your honesty. All right, Killing Them
For
Softly.
my honesty, yeah.
Underrated.
I'm
Killing Them Softly.
gonna
Underrated
go
gangster
with
flick or
Carlito's Way.
Carlitos. Me, Benny Bronco from the Bronx. Which all right,
Great
we're going with All right, well, this is a tough one for Godfather. Even Godfather or Donnie Brasco.
Godfather, man.
Menace to Society or Once Upon a Time in America.
Once Upon a Time in America.
Boys in the Hood or Goodfellas.
Can we come back to that one?
Yeah, we can. I will allow it.
Thank you.
And remember, you sometimes when I tell people when it's a movie one, I sometimes tell people if you had to watch one of those right after you get done with this interview, which one would you pop
That's
into
good.
DVD?
That's a good point.
That's
yeah.
usually like the whole flip the coin when it's in the air. You'll figure out which side you want it to land on. But we'll get back to Boys in the Hood. Scarface or Blood In, Blood Out.
Definitely Scarface.
City of God or Boulevard Nights.
Boulevard Nights.
Pulp Fiction or On the Waterfront.
On the Waterfront.
King of New York or Training Day.
Training Day.
Training Day. I can feel the pain. What do you feel? Do you think they should release the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They did it for Zack Snyder. I just feel like Ayer didn't get a chance to make his movie, and especially since he set the stage for James Gunn to do whatever he wants. Like, go back and make it right. Warner Brothers needs to make it right.
I think we'll see it.
Yeah.
Bonnie and Clyde or Carlitos Way.
I'm gonna go with Carlitos Way.
Do you make sure you keep Final Cut on your films when you're negotiating right now, or did you at some point have to give that up?
No, I have Final Cut on everything.
Nice.
Now, if I get a studio movie, I don't know if I'll have that, but
okay. Training Day or Carlitos Way. We're going up now.
Jesus Christ. Training Day.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Carlitos Way is another one of those just like underrated, but it's such a fucking classic.
I'm a huge Ayer fan, and Antoine Fuqua.
This is a tough one for you here. On the Waterfront and Boulevard Nights.
I'm definitely gonna have to stick with Boulevard Nights.
Boulevard Nights has not had any problems so far. All right, we got to get to this one at some point. Boys in the Hood or Goodfellas? Oh no, right? Is that? Yeah. That's the one we skipped.
I'm gonna go with Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood, going with local versus genre here. This is why I like the bracket, because I get to feel like which part of your personality wins out in these battles of like.
I'm trying to think of what was the influence, what movies have influenced the most. And my first review, the reviewer, his name is Jason Coleman, said that Sideways reminded him of Boys in the Hood.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so I got to stick with that.
But now it goes up against Scarface.
Yeah, let's come back to it.
Godfather versus Once Upon a Time in America. Similar structured film.
Yeah, definitely Godfather's going to take that one.
All right. And now we're back to the pain. Boys in the Hood versus Scarface.
I'm going to go with Scarface because I got to work with Stephen Bauer and Pepe Cerna, and they're both in that film.
All right. There you go. Another interesting choice based on your own experiences. There you go. All right. Our final four. We're here with Kenneth Castillo, director. We talked about all his movies, about his start, about where he's at, about his book, about his masterclass. I want to say thank you again before I forget for coming on, man. I hope you've had a good time so far.
Oh, it's been great. It's been a great conversation.
All right. Well, now let's finish it up with the final four on bracket bid here. We got Godfather Trilogy versus Scarface. It is the ultimate mafia family story versus probably, I would say, the most popular poster in any trap house.
That's true.
And honestly, for a minute, I was gonna buy the palm tree wallpaper for my room for the background. I still might do it if I move to a new house and I have
Definitely gotta do it. You
I
definitely gotta do it.
Kiki, Chichi get the yayo, take the gun, leave the cannoli.
Yeah, Godfather 2 is still one of my top 2 films of all time. I'm gonna have to go with Godfather 2.
The fact that just the Ellis Island scene, you know, you're shooting that movie in the 70s. You have like,
and you're making it look like 1920.
Yeah, and it's 300 extras, and I can catch a camera spike, Kenneth, like you wouldn't believe me. That's like my gift as an editor, is I can be scrolling at things through 4 or 5 times speed, and I'll catch a motherfucker that spiked the camera.
Yeah.
And I'll immediately take a screenshot and send it to the actor because I'm an asshole. And I'll say,
can see those. I would never have her on my set.
I swear to God, I have a folder in my computer that's just fucking, I caught you. I saw you, motherfucker. You spiked the camera. I swear to God, I have a folder in my PC that's for that. But you watch that scene, and I'm sitting there watching it. Not one person is out of character in this 300 extra scene, and it's like the camera's rolling, and it's just like, and it's something so simple, but it adds so much.
Oh,
fucking,
it's so rich.
It's masterful, man. Anyway, go ahead. You're taking Godfather, I'm assuming here.
Oh yeah.
All right, and then Boulevard Nights. These are the other two that I've had. Like these have had the easiest run, no question on these. Boulevard Nights or Training Day.
Boulevard Nights, bro.
And now, are you gonna go with one of the most famous movies of all time, or are you gonna go with a film that speaks to you personally?
So we can't leave them. We just leave them.
Oh no, you know why not? Because if there's a tie, like when I do this with multiple people, the rules are if there's a tie, then I have to be the tiebreaker. So if you opt not to decide, then that might put me in a tough situation. I don't know.
Okay, well, let me give you my reason why it should be a tie.
All right.
I have a personal connection to Boulevard Nights only because I love the film. It's a huge influence on my work, and also I'm very good friends with Richard Yankees, who plays Raymond in the film, and Danny De La Paz. I actually got to go to a private screening. It was just us, me and the cast and my wife, and my producer of my film, and watch the Warner Brothers remastered version of Boulevard Nights. And then Godfather 2 has Yvonne Cole in it, who was in my 5th film, and it's a film that I study constantly. So you know what? I'm going to make a personal choice, and I'm going to go with Boulevard Nights.
Boulevard Nights. You know what? You had given me a good enough argument that I was going to give you a pass on the tie, but you came through with a decision at the end, and you know, your logic is sound there. It's not, you know, The Godfather's got enough accolades.
Yes, definitely.
But it's definitely a movie where if I catch it on anywhere, someplace, like whatever point it's in, it's that, you know, boom.
I'll watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm watching that till the end.
Quick story. I got invited to do a Q&A of the 40th anniversary of Boulevard Nights with the entire cast. There was about 4,000 people at this event for that film. And I'm actually not good friends, but I'm friends with the director. I got to meet the director. And when they just did a screening of it at the Beverly Cinema, Quentin Tarantino's theater, another sold out screening every time. You know, 40 years. It's been over 40 years now. So it's an important film for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned Zoot Suit earlier. When we screened at the San Diego Latino Film Festival last year, it was at the drive-in, and it screened. It was a double feature with Zoot Suit. So
that's great.
That was cool, and it was cool because the theater was like in the South Bay here by Tijuana, so you could basically see you could see Mexico in the background, big giant screen, and and there was and I've seen my movie on big screens at festivals and stuff before, but this is the first time I got to see my movie at a drive-in, and that was super dope. Well, anyway, I've kept you past your time, Mr. Castillo. I hope you had a good time, man.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for reaching out. It's always great to talk to a fellow filmmaker. And, you know, keep at it, man. Just keep at it. That's all we can do.
I appreciate it. I would do you mind? Oh, okay. One last thing. Can you just do a quick promo for the for the stream if you get?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you on the big screen. Just say, hey, you're Kenneth Castillo, what you do, and you're watching Twin Burrito podcast or something.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, wrong guy. Go ahead, whenever you're ready, man.
Hi, I'm writer. Let me try that again.
All right. Take two.
Take two. I'm writer-director Kenneth Castillo, and you're watching 2 a.m. Burrito.
All right. Perfect, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for being on the show. Everybody, make sure that you pre-order the book Stereotypical by Kenneth Castillo. Signed up for Chicano Hollywood if you want to be a part of his class coming up. Go catch his movies on Amazon. Just IMDb the guy. He's got credits. He's telling our stories. He's doing his thing. He's not stopping. I hope you keep making movies, brother. And hopefully we can talk soon. Peace out, brother.
Definitely.